Welcome to Reading the Gospels Together for Monday, September 7th, and today we're reading Acts chapter 25. Now, we've left Paul languishing in a Caesarean prison while Felix leaves town with pockets full and the new governor Festus takes his place. After a brief stopover at his Caesarea residence, Festus travels to Jerusalem only to be greeted with a delegation still complaining about Paul. They helpfully suggest that, if Paul is transferred to Jerusalem, it might be better to kill him en route. But Festus is no fool and says if they want a trial, Jerusalem is not the place for it. Caesarea is where it's going to be held, so come on down. After a week or so later, they do, and the court is convened, and the accusers have their say, and Paul simply replies, I've done nothing wrong against the Jewish law, or against the temple, or against Caesar. Now remember that line. That's very important in all that Luke has been doing. And before you think, well, finally, Paul is standing trial before an honest governor, get this. Festus, we read, wishing to do the Jews a favor, says to Paul, are you willing to go up to Jerusalem and stand trial before me there on these charges? What's the favor? Allowing Paul to be killed en route, as we heard them planning a few verses earlier. But this time it's Paul who plays no fool. He plays his final card instead and says, I appeal to Caesar. Now, appealing to Caesar is every Roman's right. Unfortunately for Paul, it's now 59 AD, and the Caesar to whom Paul is appealing is Nero. While at this time in history, Nero has not yet revealed the full extent of his madness, nor has he yet put the blame for the burning of Rome on the Christians. That's still 5 years away. Nevertheless, in the hindsight of history, we know that Paul's efforts are doomed. His appeal to the emperor, while not resulting in his freedom, will nevertheless extend his correspondence ministry by several years. Had he simply been transferred to Jerusalem and the ambush had happened as planned and Paul would have been killed, then much of our New Testament in 59 AD would have come to an end and be missing. Well, back to our story. Remember the Agrippas. We are now at Herod the Great's grandson, who has jurisdiction over the north of Israel, including the Galilee. He and his wife Bernice drop in on a friendly visit, and Festus, in conversation, outlines the Paul affair. Festus describes the essence of the dispute this way. When his accusers got up to speak, they did not charge him with any of the crimes I had expected. Instead, they had some points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a dead man named Jesus whom Paul claimed was alive. A dead man named Jesus who Paul claimed was alive. That's an astonishing way to describe how Romans viewed Christianity in those early days. It was enough to pique Agrippa's interest, who asked to see Paul. And Festus makes yet another summary of the events so far, after which Paul is told to speak. He does so formally. Remember when we talked a number of chapters ago about how Paul made a motion with his hand and then began to speak? That's a sign that a formal oration is about to begin. But that's all part of chapter 26, and we're going to hear about that tomorrow. But before we get there, do you notice how things have slowed down? How summaries of events are given time and time again? How things which are quite frankly of lesser importance than much of what we've heard in the first 23 chapters are being given lots of space, and things we would rather hear much more about, such as what's happening with the Christians in Jerusalem, or with Peter, or the other apostles, or Paul's sister and nephew, all of that seems to have been forgotten. What's going on? Well, my own conclusion is that Luke, who is with Paul in Caesarea, is writing more from his immediate eyewitness point of view, and so he's taking more time and including more detail. This is often the case when we're dealing with the sections of Acts for which Luke himself is present. That which has come before, and Acts has covered almost 30 years of time up to this point, is compressed to only the major details, while the events which are more current, such as the legal trials of Paul, for which Luke himself was an eyewitness, were given more space. We're within 3 years or so of the conclusion of Paul's story, and for Luke, this current legal squabble is of prime importance and comparatively recent for his audience, and so he spends time here. Also, and possibly of greater importance, it's an opportunity for Luke to stress repeatedly that Paul, and by extension the greater Christian faith, has nothing in its beliefs which are either a threat to Rome, as Festus himself repeatedly affirms, this guy's done nothing against Rome, or a contravention of Judaism, as the high priests and Sanhedrin claim, and which Paul repeatedly denies. Christianity, says Luke, is for Roman and Jew alike. It's not in contravention to either Jewish history or Roman law. It's a faith acceptable to Jewish and accessible to Jewish and Gentile alike, offensive to none, and a blessing to all who believe. As Paul himself says, I have done nothing against Caesar, against the temple, or against the Jewish faith. So, where does that leave us now? Well, it's the case that Luke is making, as strongly as possible, through these extensive law and order chapters. Christianity is for everybody, an offense to none. Consider these last few chapters to be a mini-series all on their own. Tomorrow, every courtroom drama has a big speech, and chapter 26 is Paul's turn, this time to King Agrippa no less. But I think in our minds, as we hear this speech, we should still hear the words, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. We'll see you tomorrow.